the GBN Television Facebook page, and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Good morning to each and every one of you. This morning we are talking foster care. I have in studio with me the Alternative Care Supervisor at the Child Protection Authority, Chanel Phillip, and we'll be talking all about the program and how each and every one of you can actually lend a hand and be a part of this program. Good morning, Ms. Phillip.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
No problem. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Nice. So let's get right into it. Foster care.
Yes. So at the Child Protection Authority, we have a foster care program where we appeal to people of the nation to become foster carers to help us care for the children who, for whatever reason, cannot live in their birth families. So as part of our role at Child Protection, we investigate allegations or reports of abuse, neglect, and any suffering that a child may be experiencing. Through our process, it may be determined that the child can no longer live with their birth family and they would need to be placed in a safe alternative placement. Now, ideally, we look for kinship carers first, so cousins, aunties, grandmas, someone within their own biological network so that they still can remain within their family. However, not all family networks are able to provide that support. So when that's not an option, that's when we look to foster care. And foster carers can be a family, a mum, a dad and some children. It can be a single person. You don't have to be a married couple to be a foster family. You can foster as a single person. The requirements are that you just have to be of a certain age, you have to have a police check, and you have to pass our home assessment process. So the way it goes is that we have these leaflets that we hand out to people telling us all about foster care. Once you decide that you're interested in becoming a foster carer, you can fill out an application form. You would then also need to submit that application form with a police check. Once we've received your application and your police check, we will then determine if you're suitable for the next step, which is to have someone come and visit you at your home and assess your home, the space you have, and your family circumstances, what your working schedule's like, what your family think about you becoming a foster carer, because it can't be a single decision. You as the mum of the family can't say, I'm going to foster if dad and children are not on board, because everybody has to welcome that child and play a part in them becoming part of the family. So we'll do that assessment. If that assessment is positive, we will then have you as a registered carer. We will provide training sessions. We have sporadic training sessions to help you understand the challenges these children will face, some of the behaviours they may display. Because being a parent of even 20, 30 years, some of the children we have in our care will display behaviours you've never seen before, by virtue of the trauma they've suffered, what's led them into foster care. So we provide training and support. Once we have a child that matches your family, we do try to match as closely as possible. So if we have a 15-year-old girl who has certain types of behaviours, we wouldn't place her in a family with teenage boys, let's say, for example. So we have to make sure the child fits the family and the family fits the child. The family can meet the child's needs and that the child can fit in with that family's dynamics. So once we've done that matching process, you'll get the call, we've got this child, we'll tell you about them. We'll tell you as much as you need to know. So we'll tell you about their behaviour patterns, where they go to school, their family dynamics, so that you can be prepared for the task at hand. If we don't tell you something, it's because it's confidential and it will not impact on your ability to care for the child. The child will then be introduced to you, maybe do a weekend visit if it's in a planned way, and then move in with you and live with your family like a child of your own. Emergencies happen. So sometimes we have emergency carers who we can call at any time and say, I've got a 10-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, I need you to hold them for the night, for the weekend. And those kind of carers will just say yes to everybody because they know it's just for a short time while we get a planned placement. So the child will live with your family. The authority will provide a financial allowance to assist in the care of the child. We will provide financial assistance for educational costs, books, school uniform, and we'll cover medical costs as well. The allowance you receive would be to buy food, to send them to school, etc. We will visit once a month at the family home, and we'll visit the child at school. That's to check on you as the carers and your family to see if you need any assistance there. And then we'll visit the child at school, not only to check up on their academics, but to also find out from them away from the home how they're doing. Right. You know, because it's hard for a child if they're unhappy to be sitting next to foster mum and she's saying, it's wonderful, we're doing really well. And this child is thinking, oh gosh, I hate being here. Right. So we need to talk to the child separately so we can understand what's going on from their perspective. That is it in a nutshell. We have different type of carers, like I just explained. So currently we're looking for emergency carers, the ones we spoke about, and they will provide care for up to 1 week on an emergency basis. So if I pick up a child in the police station at 2 o'clock in the morning, I need you to pick up your phone at 2 o'clock and open your door and accept the child for me, please. And again, I'll give you as much information as I have at that point. The next day, the allocated social worker will be in touch to let you know what the plan is for that child. And then hopefully we can move them onto a short-term placement or into a kinship placement. And the kinship is what we talked about before, the family members. A short-time carer could provide care for a few months to 6 months. In this time, we're trying to establish if this child can be returned to the environment that they was removed from, or if they need to be moved on to a permanent kind of care. So that's what our short-term carers do. Anything from a month to 6 months will give us time to understand what exactly the plan is for that child. Our long-term carers are indefinite. That could be for years. If we get in a child in at 12 and it's determined that going home reunification is not feasible for that child, adoption's not feasible because of their age, because of their wishes, then they will stay with that foster carer until adulthood, until they're 18. Once they're 18, and as we all know, not everybody's ready to leave home at 18, right? I'm sure some of us are still at home, all in our 20s and 30s, right? So what we need then is stay and put carers, and these are carers who will keep children who are no longer children in the eyes of the law, but are still children in their hearts, in your heart as well. So we appeal to those carers, and a lot of our long-term carers will keep a child on over 18. In that instance, what the authority will try to do was, if the child is not in education anymore, once they're in education, we'll continue the financial support because they need to finish school. Once they're finished school and you're willing to keep them, that changes the dynamics, because legally at 18, this is an adult. So what we will do is we would try to assist in helping that child find employment so that the financial burden is covered, in the sense that that child will have an income and will be able to contribute to the house like any adult living at home would. So we try to support in that way. Ideally, that stay and put placement should be from 18, maybe for 2 years. That gives them time to save up if they're working. It gives them time to finish their education. And then the family and the child will decide, well, the young adult will decide when it's time for that child to move out on their own. Respite care is something as well, because a lot of people are thinking, well, I don't have space in my home to have a child for months or for years. We have children in the residential homes who, for one reason or the other, are not in a foster placement, are never going home. And it would be lovely for those children to be able to spend a Christmas with a family, an Easter vacation, a weekend even, because we can accommodate for a weekend where we can't accommodate for a full week. So we would like respite carers who are willing and able to provide that short-term care.
Right.
So let's say we have a child who, as I said, in the home. It would be nice for that child that they know that Blossom's going to take me every other weekend or one weekend in a month, So it gives them something to look forward to. It gives them a chance to experience a family environment. And it might even prepare them to be able to live in a family environment. Some of our children, because of the nature of the abuse they've suffered, are deemed, it's not a term I like, unfosterable. It means they can't settle in a foster placement just because of where they're at internally. Having that respite care, that short time in a foster home, could introduce them to it in a really slow, in a way that allows them to adjust rather than just being thrown in. So respite care has multiple benefits for the children and for the carers, because as I said, you want to help but you don't have the space and time to do it full time. Respite care is something that you can consider. So those are the types of fostering we have. I've told you about our application process. Our home assessment is very intrusive, and I will say this. And the reason why we'll ask a lot of questions is because I cannot take a child who's been abused in one situation and place them in another unless I'm 100% sure that this is a safe place. So I will ask you about your childhood. I will ask you about your relationship with your siblings and your parents. I'll ask you about your relationships. If you're married, how you met your husband, how you'll deal with conflict. When you're vexed, what does that look like, So we can understand who you are as an individual, and that also helps with our matching process. Because if you're a person who, when you're vexed, you want to go in your room, you don't want no one to talk to you, you don't want to be left alone. I don't want to place a child who's been neglected who no one ever studied with you. So when you go into your vex mode, this child's thinking, oh my God, something's wrong. They hate me. They don't like me. So all these things help us to match children to the right carers. So while it might seem like, God, they're good for us, what are they asking me all of this for? It's for a very good reason. We have to know who you are. We have to know what you stand for. We need to know what your religious beliefs are. We need to know what your beliefs on corporal punishment are, because no child in foster care is to be beaten. You're not to strike them, not at all. For varying reasons. You don't know what abuse they've suffered in their past, what could trigger an emotional response in them, what could trigger a negative behaviour. So physical chastisement is not allowed. What we would do is support the carer in alternative methods of discipline. Removal of privileges, being grounded, you're not going sports, these kind of things that will have a similar impact and help the child understand that negative behaviours will have a consequence, but not a physical one. So you're allocated every child has an allocated social worker. That social worker will also be attached to the carer. So as I said, the visits home won't just be about the child, it'll be about you as the carer. How are you coping? What can we do to assist you in this task? Because the reality is the children that we place in foster care, a lot of them have high emotional needs. They may display challenging behaviours, and understanding those behaviours is key to the longevity of the placement. Because if the first time the child tells you something which would could be considered to be rude, I don't want them in my place. But we have to understand, where's that coming from? Right. Why does this child behave like that? So our training sessions will help you look at, not at the behaviour, but at the cause. Once we understand the cause, that's when we can help rectify that behaviour. A lot of these children need reteaching. They need to learn how to live in an environment where cursing and screaming and hitting and just general negative behaviours are not the norm. A lot of them, that is all they've known all their lives. So when this child gets vexed and knocks down a whole set of things off your counter, which you've never seen a child do before, that is what they've been taught. That's how they know to release their anger. Right. So it's about teaching them new ways and helping them learn coping mechanisms that we would have instilled in our children from growing up small, that they didn't have that opportunity. So it is it's a challenging task. It's not for everyone. But with the support of the Child Protection Authority and the training, it is a task that people can do, but you have to have that desire to do so. Mm-hmm. I don't want people to apply to be foster carers for the allowance. It don't make sense. The allowance is not a big allowance. You have to do this because it's something you want to do, because you want to give back. You want to see these children thrive and break the cycle. A lot of the children who come in our care, we've had their parents, their grandparents, their children to come. What we want to do is break that cycle. We want to get them out of those negative environments, teach them new coping skills, and so that when they move on from their time in care, they come out as a functioning member of society, someone who can perform well, hold down a job, have families of their own, and to break that cycle of generations coming through the system. So it's a task. I'm not going to dumb that down, but it's a doable task. It's a task I myself have done, both in England and here. It's challenging, it's rewarding. When you see that change in that child, the child who doesn't say morning, saying morning, it sounds so small, but that's you who's done that. Yeah, the child who doesn't say please and thank you. Every time you give them something, you're holding on to it tight. I didn't hear you. Thank you. After a while, they're saying thank you before they even get it. That is a big step for that child. That's a big step that you help them achieve. Then there's the bigger things, children who come to you who academically are so far behind. But then when they leave your care, be it a month, 2 or 3, because of what you've instilled in them, they're now reading, they're now, not coming 29th in class and coming 10th. It's those achievements that you can give to these children that set them up for adulthood. That is the real reward in fostering. So I sometimes say being a foster carer is a calling, almost like a nun. You have to really have something in you that you want to do this, because if you don't have that desire, it's not going to work. And I wouldn't want anyone to become a carer who's doing it, let me see, I'm not too sure, but okay, yes, those who, there's still something that's saying to you, let's try. But those of you know this is really not for me, leave it alone, because our children are already suffered. They're already traumatized. We do not need them to go into a home where when I come, they say, well, she didn't give us enough. She said we didn't have money for school. I didn't go, these kind of situations. Again, that's why our assessment process is so intrusive. I will ask you a question, you'll give me the answer, and the question you think I'm asking you, that's not what I want to know, but your answer will tell me, you know?
Right.
And that's how I've been trained to assess and to weed out those who are, this is for them, and it's not. And those who it's not for, doesn't mean in terms of having someone in their home on a permanent basis, doesn't mean that the respite wouldn't work for them, you know? So you may come in thinking, right, I want to foster babies. And when I came into it, I just wanted to foster babies. These babies are adorable and they're so sweet and they're so lovely. Yeah, but then they cry and you have to stay up all night. And then when they need to go to the doctors, you have to be able to get them there and back. And when they have to have contact with their parents, you have to ensure they're available and ready. So while babies sound like the easiest thing to foster, it's not for everybody.
Right.
And then people think, oh, I'm great with teenagers. Teenagers love me. They listen to me. And then they come in your house and then they start going out when you tell them not to go. When you ask them where to come out, they tell you, mind your business. And, you know, and then you think, maybe teenagers are not for me. So then we will match you and think, even though you think you're good with teenagers, I think you'll be better with a 7-year-old. And that's where our area of expertise comes in our matching process. So it isn't always what you come in for that we will approve you for. But that's a process that we'll talk about and go through throughout the assessment application process. So my plight here is just to plead with the listeners, and for those who are listening and it's not for them, but you know a neighbour, a cousin, or you think, Mummy would be so great at this, or Tanti so-and-so, let them know. Reach out to us at the Child Protection Authority. We're on Scott Street. We have our telephone number is 435 0293. Yep, 0293. I forgot. I remembered. We have a hotline, 677. And you can pop into our offices where you can collect. You can call. We can email you the application form. So if you can't get to us, there's no reason why you still can't apply. And we will come to your home. We will do that process with you. We'll walk you through it. We'll support you. And that's it, really, in terms of the application process.
How big is your foster care database?
So currently I have 60 carers, all full. So if I get a child tomorrow, I have to start thinking, right, who's got a space? Who can I juggle, you know? So we need to increase that. We need to double that.
I was about to ask, what would be an ideal number? I mean, yes, I know you'd like an infinite number of foster carers. Of course,
I would.
But what would be ideal for Grenada situation and how often you get these cases? What would be an ideal number of foster carers?
So if I have 60 on my books, and bearing in mind almost half of that are kinship carers who only care for their children. So in essence, I may have 30 foster carers.
Right.
So if I could have, I would love to have 100 carers on my book. Not all would work all the time, but if I had a database of 100, I think it would make it more feasible that children wouldn't have to go into the children's homes because they can live in a family environment, which is our preferred option for them. So if I could recruit over 2020, even 50 would be a great achievement for me. And then based on what we've got, it may be sufficient. But with increased reporting, because the Child Protection Authority are trying to be all around educating people about what we do, about mandatory reporting, we are governed by the Child Protection and Adoption Act 2010, which states that some people are considered to be mandatory reporters, which is under Section 27 of the Act. And that is anyone by virtue of their profession who comes into contact with children, if they have a suspicion that the child that they've come into contact to is at risk of or is suffering significant harm, they have a duty to report it to the Child Protection Authority. It goes as far to say that if you do know something and you don't report it and it comes to our attention and we establish that you knew, you can be prosecuted under that act. So teachers, nursery care providers, nurses, doctors, everyone who by virtue of their profession comes into contact with children on a daily basis has a mandatory duty to report. And we are putting that out there. Everybody in my book has a duty to report. So if you know something's happening next door by a neighbour, even if you don't know for sure but you're suspicious, let us know. Because we will then determine if it's true or not. You don't have to know for sure. You just have to have a suspicion. Something's not right there with that child. I find the child's always bawling. I find the child's always dirty, going to school late. Something's not right in this home. Let us know. We will do the investigation and determine if there is a need for assistance. And assistance doesn't mean removal. Assistance means referring to the necessary programs that could assist that family to get past whatever trouble they're seeing at that time. So it just could be that there's a need for seed, because finances are low and that's why the children are not going to school every day, because they don't have money every day to send them. It could be a lack of parenting skills, just about getting the children up on time and getting breakfast ready on time, and time management might be the issue. So there's services that we can signpost to that will assist with that. But if it does come to the thing where these children are not safe in this environment, regardless of the interventions, then we need to remove them. So with more people reporting and more investigations happening, by virtue, we're needing more placements. So as much as I don't want more children in care, I want the referrals, because we need to know what's happening for these children to keep them safe. So if we can work with the children at home, we will do. Our first point is not foster care or residential care. Our first thing is family members. If that is assessed as not suitable for the child, then foster care is our next option. So we desperately need foster carers. We need people to come forward, have the conversations with us. Like I said, it's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of us. And you may think it's not for you, and after having the discussions with the assessors, you might find that there is something you can provide, albeit a weekend once a month. So I think there's a way we can all contribute to the foster care system, full-time, part-time, once in a blue, whatever you can do. Please think about it, and please come and speak to us so that we can get you assessed, so that you can help. We say at Child Protection Authority that child protection is everybody's business. You don't need to be a social worker. You do not need to be employed with us to be part of the process. We are all responsible for the children. We were once children. We were supported how we got big, and while we're here and able to do what we're doing today. So we want to make sure that all the children have that opportunity, and we need the support of the communities. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you work, if you're unemployed. Once you've got that space in your home and in your heart, we will assess you, and hopefully we can work together for the good of the children of the nation. That includes Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We're not saying just in Grenada. We have an office in Carriacou as well, which you could pop into to collect an application form. So listeners in Carriacou, we're including you as well. We need carers in Carriacou too. So anyone who can help, is willing to help, or even if you think you just want to hear a bit more to determine if you can, give us a call, 435-0293, or you can email us at info@cpagrenada.org, and we will respond.
Do you have cases of reported further abuse of these foster care children, whether it's a little, a few, or a lot, in these foster homes?
In foster homes. So we... there's been one or two. It's very rare. And when we say further abuse, it may not be that they suffer sexual abuse in their home and they suffer sexual abuse at the foster care. It could be in the foster care placement that the foster carer was physically chastising, which I said in the beginning, that is not allowed. Right. And I think because in our culture, you give a child a slap when they, but trying to retrain our carers that no, we do not slap foster children. Let's try to move away from slapping all children, but 100% any child placed in your care, you're not. So we've had to remove a few because the foster carers, and when you hear the stories, it's nowhere near abuse, but it's against our rules and regulations. So okay. we cannot have it. Again, I think I don't want to call it financial abuse, but the allowance being used for things that are not for the child. Yes. Right. So if it comes to my attention that the allowance being given, but the child is saying that, well, I wasn't sent to school, but I know I sent the allowance on Friday, today's only Monday, why is there no money? So if the carers are not managing the allowance well, and even through support they still can't manage it, then I would need to remove that child, because if their needs not being met, it doesn't make sense. Right. Yeah. So it's few and far between. We have some amazing carers on board. Was it November? We had a foster carers retreat, and we awarded some of our long-term carers. Some have been caring for 20 years. Some have had 100+ children walk through their doors. They're still here. They're still fighting up. I know there's a few I can call, and they will never say no. Sometimes I have to say to them, say no. You need a rest now. Say no. Like, let me see if I can get someone else. But I'm willing to try still, So we have some amazing carers, and what we would like to do is to buddy up the experienced carers with the new carers. So you wouldn't just hear from me, because I have an agenda. I need carers. Right. Those who are doing it, I would like you to speak to them too. And they are willing to share their wisdom with you on what the task is, what the positives are, what the negatives are. I mean, we as an authority, we know some of our carers had said in the past that they find that once things are going well, they don't hear from us so much. So that's something we're trying to improve on, because we're so focused on the placements that need that help if they're on the bridge of breaking down, trying to support that. So those ones who are doing well, we're like, oh great, they're doing well, let them get on with it. But again, we have to recognise that you are still doing a task that you didn't have to do. So I still need to check on you, I still need to make sure you're okay. And a lot of our carers, just a phone call to say, how's so-and-so doing, how are you doing? We're good, we're great, okay, I'll speak to you next week. So we have already improved on that, because that was one of the critiques we had, that once things are going well, they feel a bit abandoned. Right. It's not that we don't think about you, we're so busy trying to keep the ones in crisis settled that the ones that are settled, it's like, oh, phew. And sometimes like, I don't want to call and rock the boat.
Exactly,
you know?
Right.
No news is good news, right? But again, we have to recognise that is a task you're doing, and as anybody who's providing a service, you want who's employed you or who you're answerable to check on you from time to time. So that is something we're improving on. We have already, and we will get better with time.
Do you have cases of foster carers, for lack of a better phrase, falling in love with the children in the care and not wanting to send them back home?
Oh, yes. So part of our training sessions is to deal with termination, as we call it. So helping carers, especially those who've had the child for a long time. So they've got this baby from the hospital. The baby's now 3. And it's become clear that parents, through the interventions, are not going to be able to care for that child, and it's time to put the child for adoption. That breaks a lot of hearts. And we have a lot who just adopt them because they're not letting go. And that's great, because that child has been with them from 0, now 2.5, and I get to stay with mummy, which is great. Not all the carers are in a position to adopt. And I don't want all my great carers adopting, because then I wouldn't have anywhere to put the rest of the children coming through. So we do, those who are in a position to adopt do have first preference, and those who are not in a position, we do work with them. The adoption process is a lengthy one. So by the time it's determined that that child is viable for adoption and we've got the relevant court documentation, that could be a whole year in the making. By the time we match them to parents, the introduction period, it's a day, an afternoon, a weekend. So it's a process that is designed for the child to transition well, but it gives the carer that time to transition as well. And the carer can be as involved in that process as they need to be. That they themselves, some of them say, I don't find that them parents are the right one for my child. Find somebody else. We will hear that, because they know, as they say, their child. Yeah. And this is why, and the carers are so important, and the recording as well is so important, and reporting to us. I may see a child once a month, every 2 weeks. You see them daily. You know what they're like before they come to contact with their parents. You know what they're like when they come back. You know what they're like when they're upset, when they're angry, when they're feeling vulnerable. That information is what we need to have when we're matching them to adopters, matching them to other carers. So carers, yes, we need you to care for them. We need you to love them. We need you to send them to school. We need you to discipline them. We also need you to be our record keepers, because you hold the most information. In that child's journey, that foster care is the most important person in their world. So wanting to do it and doing it right really will determine the outcome for that child, as much as whatever legal ramifications that we hold on to. What you do with them on a daily is what's going to set them up for life. So it's really important that it's a task that you have to be passionate about, that you really want to make that difference. There's times when you just have to say, you know what, this is not working. We have to, as the authority, recognise that this child at this point in their life, no matter how good a carer you are, it's not enough, and they need something different. And at that point, you have to recognise you're not a failure. You did your best, we did our best, but this is just not what that child needs right now. And being able to recognise that, not beat up yourself. We have carers who hold on. We're saying it's time to let go. No, I don't want to fail them. But what we're doing is failing them in a situation that is not right for them. So recognising what's best for the child, not what's best for you, or what's best for us as an authority, what's best for the child. We always have to keep that in the forefront of our minds so that we get it right for them. And we're only humans. We don't always get it right. But as long as we learn from our mistakes and rectify, and so we're always looking at our policies, looking at updating how we work and how we do things. We like for our carers to stay up with us on those changes, because what they told you last year to do for a cut, they're telling you something this year, you know?
Right.
So we have to keep up to date with current trends and what's working well and what doesn't work so well and adjust accordingly. And children are changing with exposure to the internet and the influences from outside. What children wouldn't have done 5 years ago, they are now doing now. And what they're going to do in 5 years, they're not doing now. So keeping abreast with what's happening for children at school when they're socialising with their friends and being able to monitor that, being able to work that cell phone and put parental locks on it. And because we know the cell phone is, it causes a lot of problems.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's take a quick break and come back inside. We are speaking with a representative of the Child Protection Authority, giving us some information on the foster care program of the CPA. We're going to take a quick break and come back inside. This is To The Point on Classic and GBN.
When you think of Grenville Cooperative Credit Union, what comes to mind? A reliable financial institution that has stood the test of time. Maybe you think about the convenience and quality financial service they provide. Do you think about their readiness to help you retire, achieve your academic goals, build your dream home, buy the piece of land or the elegant car? Or maybe the convenience of their different locations, Jubilee Street in Grenville, the sub-office at Belmont Estate, or the new outlet on Lucas Street in St. George's in the Derek Sylvester building. Maybe you always consider how they're always a phone call away. 442-8602 or 438-4228. They're also online, www.grencu.org. No matter what comes to mind, remember, Grenville Cooperative Credit Union is the best place to save and to borrow, working with you to make your brighter tomorrow.
The Grenada Airports Authority wishes to advise the general public that the flying of kites within the vicinity of the airport is prohibited. Prohibited areas include, but not limited to, Caliste, Frequency, Fort Judy, St. Paul's, Mount Parnassus, and Mount Morris, and the vicinity of Lauriston Airport in Carriacou. Flying of kites poses serious threat to aircraft safety, as kites can be easily ingested into aircraft engines or become entangled in aircraft propellers, resulting in engine failure with tragic consequences to aircraft passengers and persons on the ground. The Grenada Airports Authority therefore urges the general public to cooperate towards ensuring the safety of aircraft operations into and out of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. The Grenada Airports Authority will be seeking the assistance of the Royal Grenada Police Force in dealing with violators of this notice. Let us all play our part in making this Easter kite flying season a safe one.
EC Polymer Notes, our new money.
Here's how you can detect genuine EC Polymer notes. Feel. Polymer notes feel smoother than the material from which paper notes are made. Also, the front of each note has raised bumps at the top left-hand corner. These bumps form shapes that are familiar to you. Look for the clear window at the front and back of each note. This window allows you to see through the notes. If you hold the notes up to the light, you'll see the value of the note in an area of plain colored print. Tilt. A holographic foil is on the $100, $50, and $20. The images move and their colors change when you tilt the notes. Remember, detecting genuine EC Polymer notes is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Feel, look, and tilt.
EC Polymer Notes. Cleaner, safer, stronger.
Hi, I'm Francis Urias Peters. To really know who I am, you must look at the plays that I've written over the past 30 years, because they reflect hard work, discipline, and my inner beliefs. Now, these values were shaped by my earlier bringings, because I was always curious about my roots and my identity as a Caribbean man. Now, I'm a good listener, and K105 has always been a great source of education and entertainment. Now, while the station name may have changed over the years, it has always provided valuable information which enabled me as a playwright to document and to celebrate our history, our behavior, and our achievements. K105 is my choice. It's the national station.
Welcome back to The Point here on Classic and the GBN. It's time to open the phone lines. If you have questions, queries, comments, concerns, 435-2041 is the number to call. You can also check us out on the WhatsApp, 435-2041. But please do not voice or video call the WhatsApp. We can't take those calls. Just type your messages, comments, questions, queries, concerns, and I will relay them for you. You can also type your questions on the GBN Television Facebook page or the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. We are speaking with the Alternative Care Supervisor at the Child Protection Authority, Chanel Phillip. In terms of the relationship or ensuring that the children continue their relationship with their parents, at least, make sure that mommy and daddy know I'm still around. How is that coordinated?
So what we do is once it's in the child's best interest, parents are offered weekly contact with their children in the initial stages of the removal. So depending on why the children were removed, the initial contact is supervised in our offices. We have a contact room. It's set up like a living room with some children with some toys and books and stuff. So the parent will come and spend an hour with their child once a week. If the child has been in the care system a very long time, the contacts tend to, not because we will stop them, but due to what's happening with their parents and their own circumstances, they may only see them during school holidays.
Right.
Those who are definitely never going home, their contacts do end up becoming more Christmas holidays, Easter holiday, summer holiday. But those parents who we can keep in contact with, who are cooperative, we will always offer them ongoing contact up until adoption is the final adoption. And once adoption is finalised, the contacts will stop a month before the adoption process is completed. Yeah. And that's in the child's best interest as well, because if they've been introduced to new parents, we don't want to confuse them with the back and forth. Right. But generally, we need our foster carers to have our children prepared for contact. If the child is anxious or worried, we'd expect the carer to talk to them about where they're going, who they're going to see, that there'll be someone in the room with them if they feel unsafe, that if anything happens and they feel uncomfortable, they can let the social worker know and the contact will be terminated. But someone will be in the room watching. So if anything happens that is deemed not appropriate, then the contact will be stopped. So if a parent curses or says anything to the child that is not age appropriate, they will be told that this is not appropriate, and so on and so forth. Babies is definitely once a week. Newborns definitely, once the parents are willing and able, once a week. And as I said, as the children are older and the longer they're in the system, the contact does become less frequent. But again, it's for the preparation of adoption.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Blossom, and how are you this morning?
I'm good.
I wanted to tell you something, please. I don't want to be on the radio. Can I talk to you away from the radio? I want it to be...
Well, not at the present moment.
Because what I'm saying is not a nice thing for the public to really hear.
Okay, so call after when the program is finished. You can call me back. Okay?
Right. That will be 10 o'clock.
Yes.
So you hear the phone ringing. Just as they finish, that will be me.
Okay.
All right.
435-2041 is the number to call if you have a question, query, comment, concern as it relates to foster care. You can also type in your questions on the WhatsApp. It's also 435-2041, or send in your questions on the GBN Television Facebook page or Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. To become a foster carer, what is the age range that you're looking for?
So you need to be a minimum of 21 years old. If you're a kinship carer, you just have to be 18 years older than the child you wish to care for. But minimum for our foster carers is 21 years old. Our maximum age is 68. So applicants of 68 or over will not be considered because you're expected to retire at 70. So anywhere between 21 and 65, that is open to be assessed.
Moving from foster care to adoption, what, on average, how I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. What's that process like?
Okay, so once we've had the child in the foster care system, we've done the intervention work with family, we've sought family members through maternal and paternal families, and it's determined that there's no one viable to care for this child. We'll then apply to the court for a custody order, which frees the child for adoption. Now, that in itself could have taken for us to do our investigation to determine that parents are not viable and get that court order could be anywhere from a quick one, could be a year, it could be up to 2 years. Because remember, we have to give the families a chance to rectify whatever caused their child to be removed for them to get them back. So we like to give them a 6 months window to say, well, in the next 6 months, we expect you to attend the parenting program, attend the Alcohol Anonymous program, attend the parenting program, get yourself into a place where you can offer the right care and protection for your child. If after 6 months it's clear that the parents are, for whatever reason, are not able to do so, then we'll start that application court process. We would have already applied for a supervision order, which gives us the legal right to have the child in our care, but the custody order then would have to be applied for adoption. So let's say we've been a year in, we've got our custody order. We then need to match that child with a carer, and we also have to do the adoption process, which is we'd have to interview both parents, family members, to prove to the adoption court that this is the only viable option for this child. So we have to do our investigations, go out in the field, talk to the parents, talk to their families, talk to neighbours, just to make sure we are making the absolute right decision for this child. Between obtaining the custody order and getting a final adoption order, depending on how quick we can get in front of a judge, we don't have a family court, so we're in the High Court with all the other matters. So if there's a big criminal case, we have to wait. So depending on how quick we can get in front of a judge is dependent on how quick that process will be completed. In the last 3 years, my experience is if you're adopting a child from start to end, tell yourself it could be a year.
Do you have a lot of parents who foster with the intention of adoption?
So what we'll have is we'll have people who have applied to be adoptive parents, not foster carers. We will then get a child in that, based upon the circumstances, this could be a mother who's had 4 children adopted already, she's had another baby. We know that this child is 99% likely to be cleared for adoption. So we would apply for the custody order straight away. That child we would place with what we call foster to adopt. So we'll place them with carers who've been approved as potential adopters. We'll place them with place the child with those adopters and go through the process while the child is in placement. Because we know we've already assessed that family, we would know that that child is a match to them already, and that we know that we're going to get that custody order immediately. Ideally, we'd want the custody order first before we make any placement of that nature, because we wouldn't want to place them under a supervision order with this foster to adopt family, them thinking we're going to adopt this child, and then something comes to light in between. Some cousin from America calls up and says, I want to take this child. We have to give them as a family member the opportunity to do so. So we have to be really stringent on those foster to adopt placements. But generally, those children who come in that we know from the outset it's a custody order, we get that in a quick space, we will place them in foster to adopt placements rather than put them through the foster system waiting for matching for adoptive parents.
Generally, what's the general age of children that are in foster care?
There's no general age. We've got newborn babies coming from the hospital. We've got 17-and-a-half-year-olds coming in. Once you're between 0 to 18, I can't even say there's a range at age that I can say we get more of than others, because abuse doesn't discriminate on the age of a child, you know? So family circumstances just happen and the age of the child is irrelevant to that. So what we do have is that 0 to 13 girls we can place at Bel Air Home if we don't have foster carers. That's the age range for them. The Queen Elizabeth Home, we place children there as well. They take 3 till 12 for girls and 3 to 12 to boys and 3 to about 12 for girls as well. And then the girls at 12, if they're not going home or onto foster care, can move on to Bel Air Home because they take them up until 18. So we kind of got placements for the age ranges with the homes, but ideally we'd like them to go into foster care. We try to keep sibling groups together. So if we get 3 siblings come in, we try our best to keep them in one placement. Right. If putting them in foster care means they're going to be separated, then I'd rather put them in residential where they can stay together at least. As much as I'd prefer them to be in a family environment, I'd prefer them to be together. So we do our utmost to keep children together. There's times when it's just not possible because of their ages, and we do have to separate them. But when we do the contact, the same way we talked about contact with the parents, we make sure the children have contact so that they can keep their family ties.
All right. Let's go to the phone lines. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Mr. Alexis and the guest.
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning. Yeah, good morning. I'm just butting. I'm trying to ask a question. So, for instance, if a foster parents take a child from a baby, what age did the foster parents tell the baby, well, look, I am not your real mother? And should the foster parents introduce the child to the real mother and father? And the child, regardless of how the mother is, should the child be embarrassed about how the mother and the father is? I want to know the truth of it, because sometimes children being adopted, and after a way down the line, their life being very unhappy. When they see their mother and people on the road saying, this is your mother, it's a breakdown for them. So I want to know the truthful of it.
Thank you, caller.
Okay, so when we put children in foster care, as we said, we promote familiar contact. So they should know from, if they're having the contact with their birth families, that their foster mother is that a foster mother and that their birth mother is somebody else, because they would be having that contact with them. Now, if the mother has given birth at the hospital, walked out and left the baby behind, and we have no contact with that mother, as soon as the child is old enough to understand, because they will still have a social worker, so they'll know Miss Phillip comes to see me once a month, their foster carers will be told to inform the child in a child-appropriate way that I'm not your birth mum, your mum lives somewhere else. And you use storybooks, we use colouring, these kind of things to help them understand as soon as they can. So that might not be till 3, 4 when we can start introducing the concept of birth families and foster families. When they're adopted through our service, again, if they're 2, 3, they'll be introduced to their adoptive parents, and their adoptive parents will be given skills and tools of how and when to inform the child. We always advocate to tell the child as soon as they're able to grasp the concept of adoption. We always advise not to keep it a secret. In our small community here, what the caller just said is very correct. That's your mother, with no concern of what that's going to do to that child. So we try to prepare them for that as much as we can. And to avoid that, a lot of our adoptions are overseas. So a lot of our children who are adopted to American families. There are a lot of Grenadian couples who live away who then will adopt from Grenada because they want to adopt children from their homeland. And those adoptions that are done in Grenada, a lot of the times the parents have identified the adopter. So it's a cousin, it's the neighbour, it's someone who they know and trust and want their child to be adopted by, so that they, between them, they keep that tie of, this is your mother, but I'm your adoptive mother. So that is the correct way. But I also know that some people do what we call private fostering, which is not through our agency, and I will see you have a baby, see you're not coping well, and offer to take your child. I've got the child all this time, and then 2 years later you come back and say, I want back my child. Mm-hmm. This is why we say to people, do not get involved in private fostering arrangements. If you have a child in your care that's not biologically yours, come and speak to us. We will give it a legal framework which will stop that parent coming and just removing that child from you and putting them in a situation that is not safe for them. So if you have any children in your care under private arrangements where someone said to you, look after them for a few weeks, 2 years pass, they never come back, let us know. So we can put some legal formalities around it, so that if we assess you to be the best place for that child to be, when that mum or dad shows up, they will have to go through us and the process to see if they are suitable to care for their child. It protects the carer, it protects the child. So for private fostering, I recommend you do not get involved with it. And if you are involved, because it's easy to, come and talk to us and we can see how we can assist you, make it legal. Or if there is nothing wrong with the birth parents, they just wanted a break, legally the child is theirs, they can take them back. The only how we could intervene is if they're going to take them and put that child at risk and danger, and then would start our process of there's a child at risk, we'll start our processes to protect them. But be very careful with private fostering. It can be very emotionally disturbing for the carer who's had this child in their care for so long, loving them, and someone just comes and whisks them away. So please contact us if you have a situation like that you need help.
Good morning.
Good morning, Blossom.
Morning.
And good morning to your guest.
Good morning.
My question to you, ma'am, is from your agency's standpoint, how concerned are you in terms of the amount of children you see, that is turning up, in the category of foster care and adoption, especially based on the size of Grenada? Thank you.
Thank you, Gola.
I think, like I just said to Blossom before, families falling into hardship, is you can't put a number on that. You can't say how much is too much and how much is too little. We are a small community, so you would think that it would be small. But social problems and poverty, as small as we are, there's a big number of people who fall under that category. So having children present themselves because of that, while you would think we're so small we shouldn't have these issues, we do have them, and we have to acknowledge that these things are occurring. And I think what our most common abuse is sexual abuse. And if we're honest with ourselves as a nation, this is not something new. Sexual abuse has been rife in the communities for many years. I think it's becoming more known now because people are speaking out. They now know that there are services to protect, like the Child Protection Authority, like the Special Victims Unit. You see all the marches in Child Month. So people are more aware now where to go to report it. So while it may seem that there's a higher number of these cases, the cases were always there. There's a higher number of reporting, therefore a higher number of children coming into care. So while like I said before, I don't want children to come into care, but if they're suffering and need to come into care, I'd rather they're in care where they can be safe than to be in those situations and nobody talking about it. So I think the reporting has increased, therefore the numbers we know about have increased. But I truly believe they've always been there.
In terms of the background checks done on foster carers and potential adoptive parents, what are some of the things that you look for specifically? So,
of course, the police check is the first thing. Now, what I want to say is that having a criminal record depending on what it is, doesn't automatically exclude you. Now, if you have a conviction with a crime against a child, that automatically disqualifies you. Now, if you had a conviction in 1995, a shoplifting offence, and you've had no criminal involvement since, then that wouldn't disqualify you. So I want people to think that if you've had a blip on your criminal record, I don't want you to think it automatically excludes you. But if it's an offence against a child, no matter what it is, then it does exclude you. So we do our police check. We then ask for references from people who know you. We will also do investigations in your community. So if I come to your house to do your home assessment, I will let you know I'm going to talk to your neighbours. I'll ask you what your neighbours think of you. So you're going to tell me about your neighbour who thinks you're lovely, and I'm going to say, well, what about the neighbour who doesn't like you? What will they tell me about you? What is the worst thing anyone in your community could say? I will ask you those questions, but I will also canvass the community and ask about you. So if you're saying you've had your shop running for 10 years, I will ask whoever you say patrons your shop, what are you like as a sales lady, how welcoming, So we'll do that community checks. We will ask you about your relationships with your parents and if anything crops up that sets off a red flag for me, then I may ask to speak to those family members, because like you said, I have to be sure that we're doing the right thing by placing a child in your care. So we will do as much checks as we feasibly can. Now, the police check is the only one we can do in a official capacity, but we'll do our field investigations to gather any more information that we deem necessary.
We've quickly run out of time. What are some of the important information we should remember, especially the people who are thinking about becoming foster carers and people who not so sure?
I think not so sure, thinking about it, give us a call, 435-0293. You can collect your application form that needs to be completed and submitted with a police check. Once that has been reviewed, you will be called and an appointment will be made for a assessing social worker to come to meet you in your home, to assess the space you have available to foster, to have a conversation with you about your life. From as long as you know yourself up until this point, we're going to ask you questions about everything. We'll go through that process. We'll do our community canvas, speaking to your neighbours. We'll collect your references. Once that has been assessed and approved, then we'll look at training sessions and placements of children. If you have not been approved, you'll be told why. What was the concern? And if it's a spacing issue and you're saying, well, you know, you've got your 20-year-old and 18-year-old son living with you, so we don't think that would be, you don't have the space. You may say, well, actually, 18-year-old's off to college in the next 6 months. And I will say, great. Once you've got the space, we'll reassess. So it's the application process is the main thing for now. And just getting in touch. Call us, email us, ask us questions, and just figure out if it is for you. But I think even if you have a little doubt that it's not, you might think, well, I got 6 cats, that might be a problem. It may not be a problem. Once your cats are under control and they're not going to scratch nobody's child, you and your 6 cats are welcome to foster, you know? So I don't want people to rule themselves out on things that wouldn't be a problem for the authority. So once you're interested and you know you have the space is a big thing, not just in your home, but in your heart. Once you've got the space in your home and in your heart, apply. It's better you apply and that you don't get through than not apply when you could be the best carer that I could ever have on my books. Right. So please all, do get in contact with us. Do please apply and please help us to keep the children of our nation safe.
And you can be at any form of foster parent you want, short-term,
emergency carers, short-term carers, long-term carers, stay-in-put carers, respite carers. Those are the ones we have. Respite is weekends, Christmas holidays, Easter holidays. Stay-in-put is for those over 18 who are not quite ready to go out into the world and still need that a couple more years support of a family. Then that's stay-in-put. Long-term is those children who are not going to be adopted and who cannot go home, and they could stay with you up until they're 18. Short-term is while we're figuring out what the plan for the child is. An emergency is you open that door whatever time we knock and take that child for the night or for the week until we can figure out a longer term placement. So there's so many different types where everyone can fit somewhere.
Good. Thank you very much, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Blossom, for having me.
No problem at all. That was Chanel Phillip, Alternative Care Supervisor at the Child Protection Authority, encouraging each and every one of us to get involved in the foster care program. That's the end of the program and the end of my time on Classic today. Thank you again for joining us. Those of you who watched the program, listened to the program, and called in with your questions, queries, concerns, thank you once again. Keep it locked to Classic and the GBN. Brenda is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. I am Blossom. Have a good, enjoyable, productive Thursday.